They said something about suicide, which I never considered for 1 second. Never, ever, ever would she do that.
It's like somebody punches you hard in the stomach and again, and the air goes out of your lungs and you can't breathe.
This morning, we're shining a spotlight on the case of school teacher Ellen Greenberg and her death. The case is now officially closed as far as Philadelphia County, Pennsylvania is concerned. But her parents are vowing to continue their fight to find out what really happened to their daughter. Greenberg was found dead in her apartment with some 20 stab wounds back in 2011, some of them to her back. Two different Philadelphia medical examiners have waffled back and forth about the manner of death. Now, Ellen's parents had a lot of hope when it was declared something other than suicide. But now, the present ME has said again that it's a suicide. Ellen's parents attended a Zoom hearing on Tuesday when the judge closed the case officially following this new ruling. Now, in a 32-page autopsy report that I have here in my hand, Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Lindsay Simon concludes that the manner of Ellen Greenberg's death is best classified as suicide. Simon writing that at the time of her death, Greenberg was suffering from anxiety over her work as a school teacher, specifically over grades that she was giving her students. She had an increase in energy to act on her anxious thoughts. At least one of the many knife wounds on Greenberg's body was to the back of her neck. While Dr. Simon found that the pattern of wounds was admittedly unusual, she added that the fact remains that Ellen would be capable of inflicting these injuries herself. Simon described many of Greenberg's injuries as consistent with hesitation wounds, tentative, self-inflicted injuries that can precede a fatal wound. Let's talk about this. Let's bring in board-certified forensic pathologist Dr. Priya Banerjee and retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer. Good morning to you, ladies. Dr. Priya, let me begin with you here, please. What do you make of the ME's finding here?
I don't think any of my opinions have changed. I know we've talked about this before. It's rather unbelievable to me that this is the conclusion they came to. When you look at the nature of the wounds, and there was a diagram that was shown, I think, on my interview yesterday, and it's been shown in other times, where there are wounds, wounds to the back of the neck that were labeled N and T, thank you, yes. And you can see that they are going into the base of the brain and the spinal column. That takes force. There's bony structures there, and they saw the spinal cord described as bulging from the wound. There's bleeding over the base of the brain, the cerebellum, where the base of the skull stab wound is. That means she was alive. And I wholeheartedly disagree that this would not incapacitate her. I do think it would. These are critical structures that are involved with vital functions. And so to stab herself after sustaining these wounds, I think is, I professionally disagree. I'll leave it at that.
Dr. Priya, we want to hear more. So with that wound in particular you were talking about in her spinal column, this autopsy report, it says, this doctor is saying that it could have possibly been caused by the first medical examiner at autopsy. Does that sound right to you?
So, I mean, there's always a potential for artifact. Okay, that's what we call introduced cuts or fractures. I mean, we've all done it because we are tugging and pulling and cutting. But when you have an overlying wound and then there's damage to the cord, the spinal cord, excuse me for being so colloquial, and there's bleeding at the base of the brain. Bleeding is not an artifact, okay? That is not. When someone is passed away, how do I tell artifact? I actually teach this. How do you know it's post-mortem or artifact? Means that they did not have a beating heartbeat and blood pressure, which means they won't bleed into their wounds. No one bleeds into my autopsy incisions. And so that is a vital differentiation that we make at autopsy. There's bleeding on the surface of the brain secondary to one of these wounds. How can that be denied?
Oh, so I see what you're saying. So in here, this sounds like it's not possible to you, right? If I'm getting what you're saying correctly, Dr. Priya, that you're saying because of the blood, she was alive when that wound went into her neck. Gotcha. Oh, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Let's talk about some of the facts and circumstances now. Agent Coffindeffer, I want to dig in with you on that. So Ellen Greenberg's fiance, we know, is the one who told police that he found her locked in the apartment, that he had to breach the door. I have some of his 911 call I want to play for you now.
Oh my God, she stabbed herself.
Where?
She fell on a knife. Oh no, her knife's sticking out.
What?
There's a knife sticking out of her heart.
Oh, she stabbed herself?
I guess so. I don't know where she fell on it. I don't know.
Okay, so timeline is key here. And in this autopsy report, we know that the ME is citing all these different times. Jen, at 4:51, this guy's key card shows he's going into the gym. At 5:30, we know he's seen in the lobby going back up to the apartment. So he goes to work out apparently in that time. But something that jumped out to me, the calls to Ellen begin at 5:24. So while he's still in the gym, having only worked out for, about a half hour's time here, he's calling her. That seems strange to me. I'd love your thoughts, Jen.
Well, there's so much that seems strange to me here. First of all, how about the fact that he is on camera in shorts, but according to the first responders, he was in sweats when they arrived on scene? How about the huge hiatus in time between when he supposedly left the gym and when the 911 call was made and other calls that were made before that? How about the situation with the lock? That lock does not look like a breached door with that sort of a lock. I can tell you that either the side of the door or the door itself would be completely impaired for somebody to be able to breach this. How about this? At the crime scene, there was medication for anxiety, and those medications actually cause depression. They can cause dizziness. They cause lethargy. She was not diagnosed with depression. She was actually diagnosed with being anxious. That doesn't equate to somebody who would murder themselves. And how about this, Julie? The fact she was found against that counter, you can see the blood marks. I don't know if you have that picture. So did she stab herself 10 odd times in the back, hit herself over the head with this huge knife to cause this gigantic gash? Remember, 2 knives were used. And then as she was laying there, change out knives and stab herself in the chest. This completely, to me, shows a staged scene.
I am so happy to hear you say that, because that was one of the things that one of the reviewing doctors brought up, and it is noted in this report, that did someone kill her and then make it look like she killed herself? Jen, you're saying this scene indicates that to you. What's the biggest tell? Is it the body positioning, the blood? What would you say is the giveaway for you that could be what happened here?
Well, start from, for me, beginning to end, that lock that looks staged. Then you go to the way she's positioned on the counter. Then the 911 call, not the piece you all played, but the piece at the beginning where the 911 operator is asking sort of what happened. He's, I don't know what happened. And then later he somehow discovers the knife when they ask him to do CPR, and he's quite disgusted with having to do CPR. So that's when he finally sees the knife. And then you go from these smudge marks on the back of the cabinetry, and it doesn't make any sense to be able to inflict these wounds and have this crime scene and blood pattern have this particular face to it.
Boy, this is such great insight you're giving us. Jen, thank you for all of that. Dr. Priya, when I look at some of the consultative reports that were reviewed by this ME, Dr. Simon, who issued this one, we got some really famous names. We have Dr. Cyril Wecht, we have Dr. Henry Lee, among others, on this list. I know you reviewed the report. Was there anything in particular from these consulting doctors that really jumped out to you?
Well, I was happy to see that many of them agreed with me, that they are also suspicious that the pattern of injury, the locations, as discussed, are very abnormal and not inconsistent with suicide. I think many of them have agreed that, independently so. I have not seen their reports. I'm just reading the excerpts that are contained within this 32-page document, but that they also feel that this is a homicide. Dr. Lee said that based on the blood pattern, which again is outside my expertise, but others like Dr. Wecht also agreed that this is highly atypical for a suicide. And I think, I always come back to these wounds, N and T, as shown here, as being very injurious to her brain and spinal cord, upper spinal cord, that to me would lend her unable to continue to stab herself.
Excellent insight. Boy, I could talk to you brilliant ladies all day long. Thank you so much. We're going to keep following this. We'll follow what comes next. I am sure the Greenbergs aren't going to give up here. Jen Coffindaffer, Dr. Priya, thank you both so much.